Frederick Lawrence is with us tonight to discuss off script. He's a lecturer in law at Georgetown Law, CEO of the Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society, and importantly for the context of this discussion, a former chief of the Civil Rights Unit of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. Fred, it's always good to have you here.
Good to be back, Adam.
Second time in a week. One more time, we're going to have to put a ring on your finger.
I'll be ready, but very different topics this time.
Right. So we're talking in all seriousness about Eric Garner, this decision by the Southern District, 5 years to the day after his death. What in the name of the Statue of Liberty took so long in this case for federal prosecutors to come to this decision?
Well, let's work backwards. It's not a coincidence that it's on the 5th anniversary. It's a 5-year statute of limitations for this federal civil rights crime. So they had to make a decision by now. But your question of what took 5 years, I don't know. This is a case that's not without its complications, but it's not a big document case. It's not a case where you got to pull down computer files, the kind of things that take a long time. So
it's not like new evidence was going to fall from the sky.
There's not. And this case has been through not only 5 years, but about 4 different attorneys general in the United States. It started when Eric Holder was attorney general, and then there was another attorney general under President Obama, and we've been through Jeff Sessions and now Bill Barr. So it's been through a number of people in the Department of Justice. It does suggest that a lot of people touched this and looked at this and thought this was a hard case and decided ultimately not to go forward with it.
I know prosecutors are ultimately insulated against, being charged themselves because of these things that happen. There is this statute of limitations.
Right.
But can we just talk about how unfair it is for Eric Garner's family and also for Officer Daniel Pantaleo, the NYPD officer who put him in the chokehold? We're not going to make any judgments here about whether he was in the right or in the wrong, but should it have taken 5 years for him to be vindicated, at least from a federal standpoint?
Right. Highly unlikely that it should take 5 years. It suggests that it's other things just than looking into the case, because the case itself, the facts of the case itself, were all pretty well known. The state version of this, that's the Staten Island grand jury that decided not to go forward.
Right.
That's 5 years ago. So at that point, the U.S. Attorney was looking into it, Department of Justice looking into it, and then things sort of went into cold freezer.
Worth mentioning here that the only possible punishment that remains for this NYPD officer, Daniel Pantaleo, is internal to the NYPD, and that is still unfolding right now.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And by the way, we should not minimize that. I'm not sure that applies in this case, but there are cases where there really should not be a criminal indictment, but it doesn't mean that something bad didn't happen.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, for example, what they would have to have proven, beyond a reasonable doubt, is that he willfully violated Eric Garner's civil rights. And what does that mean in this context? It means that he used unreasonable force and that he knew it was unreasonable force. So a lot turns on that question of was it or was it not a chokehold?
I know that you don't know the specific details of this case, but here locally, the case of Bijan Gaysar.
Right.
We're coming up on 2 years in November when he was shot dead by U.S. Park Police officers after a brief chase on the GW Parkway. Similar situation here where the Federal Rights, Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice is looking at this case, the local jurisdiction here being in D.C., the federal district overseeing this.
Right.
So is this something that we would also expect to draw out possibly to that 5-year statute?
Should not take 5 years to make a decision on this. And as a matter of fact, it's actually not in your interest as a prosecutor to let it go too long, because things can happen to witnesses. Witnesses' memories fade. God forbid a witness could pass away. So it's actually in your interest to move as quickly as you can and be able to make that case and put it together.
Right. So interesting context coming from you, having literally worked in the Civil Rights Division of the Southern District.
These were the cases that we brought, and these are the cases we had to evaluate. Now, they are harder than they appear from the outside.
Absolutely.
Because you do have to show willfulness. It's not enough that he sort of accidentally did something. Yeah. He has to willfully violate his civil rights.
But it wasn't taking you 5 years to come to a conclusion.
It would not take you 5 years to figure this out.
No, Fred Lawrence, always a pleasure having you in to talk about it.
Good being back.
Thank you so much.
You bet.